Is your job literally killing you? There's a question we have to ask. There's a study at Harvard and Stanford University. Thank you.
He went there.
Where people in some parts of the U.S. live as many as 33 years longer on average than people in other parts of the country. And they wanted to say, what part of your workplace and your work environment, as cross-reference against your level of education, how does that affect your lifespan? So men and women with fewer than 12 years of education had life expectancies that were still on par with most adults in the 1950s and 60s, which means that, I don't know, they lived less time.
That's true.
Is scientifically how you put it. People with the highest educational attainment, which is 17 years and over, had only 5 to 10% of their mortality associated with harmful workplace practices compared to 12 to 19% of those with the least education. So your level of education has to do with affecting where you're going to end up working.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in a factory and you have a larger likelihood to get crushed by something or an industrial accident. It always weirds me out when I drive by a place that says, like, it's been 30 days since our last accident.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
That's serious.
It's real. Blacks and Hispanics lost more years of life because of work than whites did in every education and gender category. Women generally fared better than their male counterparts. It's the only part of the workplace where they do benefit. Am I right, ladies? Let's look at a chart, shall we? Because this is a study. 12 years or fewer,
Wow.
You'll just see that the higher the number, the more life is lost. And on the left of those two halves, you see the 17 or more years of education. On the right, you see 12 or fewer years. Men, it's disproportionate to women, and still, the less education you have, the more. Here's the largest.
The racial difference between men and women.
Isn't that weird?
Right.
That was weird.
Take
We
your time
can
on
have
this.
sort of an open debate about how much the government should be trying to get involved in fixing this. And I don't know if it's a government thing, but it definitely should be a social thing. It should be an American thing to see that how much education you have has this much of a direct impact, even controlling for things like health insurance and stuff of that sort. That should be a national shame. We should realize that we've left behind a huge number of people, and unfortunately, we live in a country where at least half of the voters think, oh, they're poor. They didn't go to school. Fuck them. They didn't work as hard. And that we have a political ideology that literally is telling people that morality should be correlated with how much you make. That if you're rich, you are a better person. You worked harder. You lifted yourself up. And if you're poor, well, then you put yourself in this position. You deserve your fate. Even
Is that
if it leads
you have stats to back that up? That's
Yeah.
Stats to back up what?
That what you just said. That's really the case.
Well, about the morality?
Yeah.
I don't have stats here, but that's
But
a large part of what my graduate work was under. It was the development of ideological systems and the correlation between basically conservative and liberal ideology have to do with conceptions of the perfect family, and we have these metaphors for morality that are tied in with things like economic upbringing. I mean, I could talk about this for like an hour or two, or I could actually send you some of the studies that
Send
I
me some of the
produced.
studies, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Don't we put
No, but-
moral virtue on education too? Not to cut you off, but don't we do that as well? Not just money, but
course, yeah.
but if you have this certain education, then you deserve a better life.
I mean, some like Rick Santorum, they question people who spend too much time in college. But I mean, you can see this every day on, like, if you don't want to have to read all of my writing, you can see this on O'Reilly every day. If you are on welfare, if you're on a social program, you're a bad person. You're a lazy person. You're a deadbeat. And we accept this largely, like we criticize it here on this program, but you're allowed to say that poor people are lazy, that they're not doing what they need to do to succeed. It doesn't matter if they've had medical emergencies that have bankrupted them or if they're currently working 3 or 4 jobs. They're lazy, bad people. They're suspicious. They're probably criminals. We see these things all the time, and that is the manifestation of the moral attack, I think, on being poor, on being downtrodden, on being sick.
Even
All of these-
linguistically. Even
Even
linguistically. A lot of the
You need
words,
to stand up. There's like an elevation, you know, you don't want to be down low. Like, we have these ideas metaphorically of what it is to be moral and what it is to be immoral.
Right. But linguistically, like poor, meaning you don't have money, but also things that are poor quality, things that are poorly
They're
lit,
bad.
poorly done, or bad.
Yeah.
Means. People who are in the mean. You're a mean person. I don't know. That's all that Chomsky
I don't know if that one
bullshit.
works out, but I like
That's
your
a
poor
Chomsky
one.
bullshit. Anyhow, let's focus on. But yeah, I don't know. Part of me, though, when I read the study, I was like, there are certain stressful jobs. A lot of these things, the largest influence, if we have this graphic, on mortality, largest influencers are unemployment and layoffs, lack of health insurance, low job control, job insecurity for men, and shift work for women.
Yeah.
So there's two things we can boil it down to. One is workplace standards. We need higher workplace standards. Can you get away from the fact that people with lower education are going to be employed in more unskilled labor? Can you ever get away from that? No.
Well, you can try to make it so that being in a place that generally has people who are unskilled doesn't have to be unsafe.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what OSHA is about.
That's exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
So that it.
But doesn't everybody? Okay, I'm not to cut down your point, but don't we all have an element of work stress to us? All of us do.
Oh, absolutely, and that goes to another point, which is like when I think of like people who are stressed at work and stress being an issue, I think of like Wall Street bankers, also who are highly educated people who have heart attacks. And as much as you want to say like, hey, dude, you can go sleep it off in your $1 million mansion. Like I know a lot of those people, and they're super stressed out. And they work, and in their mind, that we're working and we're getting paid.
High suicide
and that's
rate.
What we want.
Yeah.
High suicide rate.
Yeah.
So I just think that like doing it by education, when we look at a study like this, I like to focus on like, oh, where can we improve? I think one thing clearly what we can do is focus on like workplace standards and making it so.
Definitely.
But some places are inherently more dangerous than others.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think it's a coincidence that the side, I mean, you can disagree with my view of the correlation between ideology and these views of the poor, but that the same side that I would say regularly demonizes the poor also thinks that businesses should self-regulate when it comes to safety standards and things of that sort. They don't want OSHA. They don't want any of that. I was going to disagree. Oh, yeah. So the difference between the stress. So it is true that when you think of stress, you might think of the lawyer who suddenly is a partner. He's working 90 hours, or a stock trader, and they're yelling and everything. And that's true, but I think I can say, even from my own experience, I grew up quite poor. My parents never had more than a semester of college. There's stress and there's stress. Here at TYT, we have times that are very stressed. And I have lots of papers, and I don't know if I'm going to be prepared for the show and everything. But right now, I'm not worried about having food or health insurance. And so that stock trader or whatever, he's going really fast, but he gets to go home. And he's not going to have to worry about a medical emergency. And his kids are going to have clothing. And so I think that when you're working the fast food jobs to take care of your kids, and you may be doing it without a partner, that's a different sort of stress. You're both having to go, and you know that if you don't, you could lose everything.